Welcome back, guys. You're here with Juzzy and the continuation of modifications for the Honda Rebel 500, the CMX 500 Special Edition. Today we're actually going to look at the installation of some frame sliders. Now I'll put the link to where I purchased these online. They weren't very expensive, and depending on when you look at the ad, the price might vary, but they were a really good price, and they've arrived in perfect condition. I only took about 2.5 weeks to arrive, and as you can see, frame sliders are relatively easy to install. So I'll just show you a quick look at where they go. So as you can see, they just go in the lower part of the frame near kind of like the belly pan, and yeah, it couldn't be any easier. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like. Here's a breakdown of the parts that are included in the Motozan frame sliders for the Rebel CMX 500. I don't know if this fits for other models of the Rebel, because it does say here CMX 500, so you'd have to have a look at that if that's the case, but the measurements you can see here. So here is one that I have actually assembled, and it's ready to go on. So where it goes on the actual bike is just here, and that factory bolt head is a 14mm, requires a 14mm socket, and again it's a 14mm on the reverse side. The other side, of course, is exactly the same. So you've got a 14mm there, and if my phone can see it, maybe not, trust me, there is a 14mm just there. So the tools you're going to need for this job: if you've got an impact wrench like this, just an 18-volt one, very simple, just a 1/2-inch drive, it's got a 14mm socket, and then just use a 14mm ratchet spanner on the other end to keep it tight. So now we're going to look at how this part goes together. So as you can see, you've got the frame slider itself, so it's some sort of nylon plasticky material which you would typically find in frame sliders, and as you can see, the order of the parts to put it together. So inside there's actually nothing that is there at the moment, and that's because the washer is on this long bolt. So this bolt goes straight through like that, and it continues straight through this black extending shaft, which allows the frame slider to space out, so that when if your bike falls over, then it's not going to hit any part on the bike, and it's going to hit this first. So there is a white rubber washer that you push into here, very simple. That then goes straight through the frame slider like that, and then you essentially have a locking 14mm nut which has a nylon insert to try and keep it in place. Now you don't necessarily, I recommend that you do use that, but if you're wanting to have a black nut, then the old favourite, the Duplicolor High Heat in black, can be used. It's a really good paint to paint miscellaneous nuts and bolts on the bike, which might become sort of discolored from tightening, etc. But you literally just need to undo this 14, have a spanner on the end, locking it so it can be undone, and then this frame slider, as you can see, has enough thread to go through that component there. So your 14mm locking nut, this one, goes on the end, and you're done. So this part of the frame is not attached to the engine. As you can see, the engine mount bolt is there, so there's no issues with undoing this bolt. You probably don't want to undo two at a time. Just do one, install it, and do the other side. But I'm going to undo this 14mm now and just show you what that looks like. Alright guys, so I just used my impact wrench, just undid it on setting 3, which was, well, it's alleged to be 300 Newton meters of torque, but in reality it's probably only 250 or so. Came off in a split second, very easy. I'd always encourage you, if you're going to use tools for the job, use ones that are powerful. You see a lot of posts online about people using incorrect Allen keys, and they're just using spanners to undo bolts which are super tight from factory, and then they go and post on Facebook that they've twisted the Allen key or done something silly like that, or they've rounded off the bolt so that then they have to use an easy out to unscrew it. If you just use the right tool and the right socket, and if you've got tools that are worn, then replace them. They're not really that expensive. In Australia, we've got a car shop that sells normal priced items, and you don't need to buy anything extra fancy. But yeah, if you do start to see that your tools wear, then sure enough, go ahead and replace them. So here we go. As you can see, we've got the frame slider here. A little bit hard to do this with one hand, but essentially it will just go straight through like that. And as you can see, that now makes the whole front end of the bike protected, so it stops it from getting any damage if I am to drop it. This particular one doesn't go outside the edge of the brake and the footrest. So if you are, I don't know, installing some forward controls or something like that, that might be of importance to you. When I say forward controls, I'm talking about where your feet sit on the bike. If you've got more traditional Harley Davidson style, where your pedals are forward, then you might be worrying if that's going to have any issue with fouling where this is. Typically, that's not the case. Typically, it just goes forward a little bit, and it helps taller people, so that's certainly not me, but taller people to not have to worry about cramping up, etc. All right, so getting back to the task. So I'm just going to now put the phone down and put the 14mm locking nut on the opposite side, and then I'm just going to tighten this bolt here, keep the ratchet end on the other side, and show you what it looks like. Alright guys, so the head of the bolt for the aftermarket item is actually a 17mm. So from factory it's 14, so I had to get my 17mm 1/2-inch socket, and again 17mm ratchet spanner, and yeah, tightened it in place. So just having a look at where that sort of sits. As you can see, it's got quite a reasonable distance. Show you what it looks like from behind. Now I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in with the K-Speed belly pan that I'll be installing in a few videos time, but what I would say happens is that this will need to be undone, put the belly pan on, and then put this on the outside. So I'm not quite sure. I've got full insurance on this bike, so if I do have an accident, it's no issue to not have a crash bar. It's really just for convenience and speed of time if we have to get parts in. So yeah, this is what it looks like without. You can see width on the right side and with no frame slider on the left. Alright, I'll now install the last frame slider. Alright guys, so both frame sliders are installed now. As you can see, decent amount of protection there. Here's what it looks like from the side. Happy with that. Gives you just an extra degree of protecting your frame. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.